Welcome to the show where truth takes the...
Welcome to Political Hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. Want to connect with Howie? Welcome to Political Hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. Want to connect with Howie? Email him at howie@israelnewstalkradio.com. Now here's your host, Howie Silberger.
And welcome to Political Hitman here on Israel News Talk Radio. My name is Howie Silberger, and boy, am I in a weird mood tonight. The reason I'm in such a weird mood is because I'm trying to understand the logic behind Jew hatred. Now, I've been trying to understand this for years, and I've never been able to wrap my head around it. I've never been able to really understand why people hate Jews. Well, I have a theory. I'm going to share that with you. We've discussed this theory before, but might as well discuss it again. It just doesn't seem normal to me that so many attacks could happen on the Jewish community around the world in a few days, and nobody is freaking out. It doesn't seem normal to me that the Jewish community isn't freaking out, that our Jewish leadership, or so-called leadership, in North America and Israel, everywhere, nobody seems to care that Jews are being attacked continuously around the world. It just seems like we've accepted the fact that we are the world's punching bag, that the world is going to hate us and we just have to suck it up. That's really how it feels. At least it's how our leadership is making us feel. Grassroots, of course, doesn't really have the power that some of these organizations that claim to represent the Jewish people have. But I have a theory on that too, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. The idea that people could indiscriminately attack Jews on the street has been endorsed by our governments. Governments right across the world have endorsed that idea when they allowed for 3 years people to stand on the street and yell, glorify and globalize the Intifada. That has given permission to Jew haters to attack Jews. Because those who stood on the street and yelled, globalize the Intifada, may not have realized what they were yelling was allow the indiscriminate attack on the Jewish population. Just attack Jews everywhere. That is what the Intifada was. And unfortunately, we don't teach history anymore. And unfortunately, whatever history we teach of the Middle East, especially outside of the Middle East, even inside the Middle East, is so warped and so skewed and so leftied that there is absolutely no knowledge of what really happened. It's some optimistic, rose-colored view of some utopian world where Jews and Arabs could live together. That's what's taught in history classes. And that the Jews are the bad guys, the oppressors, and the Arabs are the good guys. It doesn't really make sense because that's not historically what happened. It's not historically true. It's not accurate. But that's what's taught to our children in history classes. This is what our Jewish day schools are teaching to children in history classes right across North America. That you could support a Palestinian state and support an Israeli state, and there's no conflict there. Even though there is a religious conflict, at least on the Arab side. But that doesn't matter. You see, that doesn't matter because this utopian rose-colored glasses kind of get in the way of truth. And so when people get into the street, people who were educated in this warped vision of what the Middle East is, when they get into the street and they start yelling globalized intifada, they don't even know. And I really feel bad for these people because if they knew what they were advocating, they probably wouldn't have advocated. They probably wouldn't have been standing in the streets yelling for it. The intifada, there were two of them in Israel. They were the indiscriminate killing of Jews in the streets of Israel. That's all it was. It was a pogrom to kill Jews, period. Arabs went out, they stabbed Jews, they blew up cafes, they blew up restaurants, they blew up buses. Their goal was to kill as many Jews as they could. That was the intifada. Kill as many Jews as you could as political pressure to pressure the Israeli government to free Palestine or whatever their cause was at the time. That was the intifada. So when you say globalize that, what you are saying is attack Jews everywhere. Take that concept of attacking Jews indiscriminately, innocent men, women, and children, innocent people who were just going about their day, and do it in every city across North America. That's what these people were advocating. And that's exactly what is happening now. Government stood down. They didn't stop it. They didn't stop the rhetoric. They didn't stop the screaming. They didn't stop the yelling. They allowed people to stand in the middle of the street and scream, kill the Jew, essentially. And that's what's happening now. Jewish businesses are being attacked. Jewish synagogues are being attacked. Jewish displays, Israeli displays at cultural festivals are being attacked. And nobody's condemning it. Nobody's standing against it. Nobody's doing anything to stop it. That's where we are today. Jews are an open target. There's a target right behind my head on this picture. Jews are an open target. Unfortunately. And the Jewish community, where are they? Where are they? A few years ago, I don't know if you remember this. I sure do. A few years ago, a man named George Floyd was killed by a cop. He wasn't even killed by the cop. He died of a drug overdose, but just died of a drug overdose after a police officer assaulted him, I guess. That's not even really what happened. You see, I've bought into the propaganda too. That's not actually what happened. When a police officer was arresting him, George Floyd went into had a drug overdose and he died. But the cop got blamed for it because he was a white cop and he was a black guy, and that's what happens. And that doesn't bother me either, but the black community went out and they protested. They destroyed cities. They said, we're not going to allow this to happen, not on our watch. We aren't going to allow people to come and attack our people. We aren't going to stand by silently while we get attacked. That's not going to happen. And they spent a full summer destroying cities across North America. Now, I'm not saying Jewish population has to go out and destroy cities across North America, but a couple of rallies of 10, 15, 20, 30, 100,000 people would be nice. It would be nice to say we are reclaiming the land. We are reclaiming our right to be in the street. We are reclaiming our right to wear our yarmulkes, to wear our kippas. We are reclaiming the right to wear a Magen David, a Star of David, around our necks. We are reclaiming our rights to be Jewish. But our leadership is saying no. Don't rile up the Jew hater. What? Don't antagonize them. What? I don't understand. I shouldn't antagonize the guy who's coming to kill me? I should care about his feelings? I should care that he might get a little upset because he came to kill me and I fought back? Should I just take the knife and stab myself? I'm not sure what Jewish organizations want us to do. They want us to be sitting ducks, just sit around and wait? And what about our government? The government that takes more than half of our salaries. What about them? Keep paying your taxes, but spend another $100 million on security. Go ahead. Your building might get attacked again, but that's okay. Keep spending money. We'll give you money to spend. We'll give you your money back to spend. We'll just keep spending money on security. Don't bother us. It's none of our business. Is this how we have to live? Is this how Jews should be living anywhere? Is this how anybody should be living anywhere? If this was happening to any other community, anywhere else in the world, any other community, even here, any other community, there would be riots in the street. If anybody got up in the middle of the street wearing a white hood, yelling, "Kill the blacks," there would be riots in the street. That person would be lynched before they got a block. But for 3 years, almost daily, people standing in the street and yelling, "Kill the Jew," not a sound, not a peep, nothing. It's actually disgusting. It's revolting. And when you think about it, you don't even know how to react. Because as a normal human being, as a person with emotions, a person with feeling, you don't even know how to react to this. It's absolutely insane that this could happen. Yet here we are, 3 years later, and we're still being attacked. And our police and our government are still doing nothing to protect us. A man walked into a synagogue on Friday night in Manhattan and assaulted somebody. Assaulted 2 people. Assaulted a security guard, assaulted a woman, yelled, broke stuff. And not even a peep. Condemnation. Oh, we're sorry that this happened. We're going to increase our police presence. Oh, sure you are. Yeah. Increase your police presence. That's going to stop things. But why are we surprised that this is happening? This is the question I have. Why are we surprised this is happening? 30 years ago, and I looked it up, and I'll tell you, 30 years ago, I did a radio show where I talked about the underground white supremacy movement in North America. I did a show about that. I did full 2 or 3 hours on this, about the underground white supremacy movement in America. And at the time, the government and security forces were focused on the Arab threat because it was right after 9/11, so they were focused on the Arab threat. And so they weren't really looking at what's going on with the white supremacy movement. And I said back then, and I had Eric Stakelbeck on the show with me. He was a security expert at the time. Now he hosts the show, Stakelbeck Tonight, on the Christian Broadcasting Network. But at the time, he was a security expert. And he was on the show with me. And I asked him the question. I said to him, "Hey, Eric, what happens if the white supremacy movement's left alone? What happens if they don't pay attention to all the other threats and they only focus on the Arab threat?" And his answer was, well, they're going to keep building and building and building, and eventually they're going to rise up. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. The threats are coming from all sides. And all sides got smart. They're using Israel as the excuse. So the white supremacists are using Israel as an excuse. The Arabs are using Israel as an excuse. And the regular Jew haters, which always existed, we always know they existed, they're using Israel as an excuse too. So there's no longer "I hate the Jews." That doesn't exist anymore. It's now "I hate Zionists." Zionists are terrible people. I hate Zionists. And that is the code word for Jew. It used to be a lot of other words, but now they're using Zionist as the insult and as the code word for all Jews. And how do we know this? It's quite simple. It's actually really simple. We know this because they're attacking Jewish targets. If this was about Israel and about Israel's so-called oppression of the Palestinians, or Israel's so-called genocide, it's a fake thing, but the so-called genocide in Gaza, if this is what this was about, then it would be quite simple. They would be attacking Israeli targets. They would go after the Israeli embassy, the Israeli consulate, the Israeli consul generals. They would attack Israelis, anything Israeli they would attack. This would be an attack on Israel. It is not an attack on Israel. It is obviously not an attack on Israel. It is an attack on Jews. So, if you're attacking Jews and you're not attacking the government of Israel, then perhaps you're not really anti-Zionist. Perhaps you should be a little more honest and say that you're anti-Jewish. Maybe that's what should happen. You should say you're anti-Jewish. But we'll go one step further, because there are always honest people out there. And there was a woman who ran a hot dog stand or some kind of refreshment stand in the French Alps. And she was having a conversation with one of her customers, and she said, "There's too many of you around." And he said, "Who?" And she says, "Too many Jews around, and people are starting to get bothered by it." Well, at least she was honest. At least she was honest. She wasn't hiding behind this whole "I hate Zionist" thing. That's not true. She wasn't hiding behind anything. She was just being honest. "I don't like Jews. There are too many of you. Get lost." And I could respect that. I don't have to like it, but I could respect the fact that she was being honest. And I wish more Jew haters would be honest. Because if we know who they are and what they are, then we know how to fight them. We know how to defend ourselves. We know how to behave. We know how to respond. But when everything is about Israel, and everything is about Zionists in Israel, then the response is different than it would be if it was about Jews. Even though when it's obviously about Jews, because there's no question that this is all about Jews. But even when we know it's about Jews, the official response from our illustrious Jewish leaders, the official response is always, "Oh, they're just anti-Zionists." We always have to question what their motives are. Why can't we just say you're a Jew hater? And I've been saying this for years. For years, I've been saying, let's just call them what they are. Call them Jew haters. Why don't we just be honest with ourselves? Why can't we admit? Why is it always Jews that are questioning the motives of our haters? When they tell us exactly what they want to do, we're always the ones who are saying, "Hey, maybe we're wrong. Maybe that's not what they want. Maybe." Why do we do that? When an enemy comes and tells me they want to kill me, I tend to believe them. I have no reason to doubt them. Somebody comes and says, "I want to kill you," I'm not going to say, "Oh, well, maybe, how are you using the word kill?" I'm not going to start parsing their words. I'm going to hear what they say and respond adequately and quickly, because I want to live. So I'm just confused as to why we continuously always try to explain away the hatred. And I thought about it for a long time. And I understand that many of these organizations that fight Jew hatred, in North America especially, rely on Jew hatred for their income. Now, I know, and I know all the people who put me on their radio stations and who air my show hate when I say this, because they say it perpetrates a myth or a rumor that's probably, accurate but shouldn't be said out loud, but that's never stopped me before. Organizations that fight hatred, any organization that fight any hatred, so it could be Jew hatred or any kind of hatred, they rely on the hatred to survive. And therefore, sometimes it is not economically feasible for them to take measures to try to stop the hatred. The more it happens, the more money flows into them. The more money flows into them, the happier they are. And sometimes the hatred feeds the machine. And I hate to say it, but sometimes money takes precedence over safety. And that is, I think, where we stand now. That money takes precedence over safety. And that the Jewish organizations have money flowing into them. Everybody's donating to Jewish organizations. Every time there's an attack on a Jewish community anywhere in the world, all the organizations send out letters saying, "Oh, well, give us money and we'll help protect you." They prey on the fear of the people who need protection. And they milk them after an attack. Now, you could call this a conspiracy theory. I really just don't care if you believe me or not. This is the way I see it. I'm entitled to my position. I'm entitled to my opinion. And this is the way I see it. And if they're milking you for your money because they're really narrowing down the fear and they're making you scared. If they're milking you for your money and you keep giving them money and they're not doing anything for you, why do you keep giving them money? It's a sickening circle, but that's what's happening. The back channels and the backdoor deals that these organizations make with governments and everyone else It's all a money power play. And you prey on the fear of the people. It just brings in more money. But what about the danger that the people are in? What about the danger that the North American Jews are in, or the European Jews? What about the Jew haters who aren't there to feed Jewish organizations money? They are actually there to do what they claim they want to do. They want to kill Jews. They want to murder Jews. They want to destroy Jews. They want to push Jews out of their country. They want to destroy the Jewish people. What about them? What about them? You're not going to placate them by throwing money at Jewish organizations that claim to protect Jews. They're not going to stop because of that. They're not going to stop because of a strongly worded press release. They're not going to stop until the governments take it seriously, until the governments crack down on hatred, until the governments start enforcing laws that are already on the books that they are not enforcing. That's the only time that we will be able to quell the attacks on the Jewish community. We're not going to get rid of the hatred. The hatred's going to be there forever. And I'll get to that in just 1 minute. The hatred will be there forever. But they could suppress the hatred. They could hold the haters down. They have before for centuries. But they're not now. The government's not holding them down because the Jewish organizations aren't putting the pressure on the government. The population's not putting the pressure on the government. The government doesn't see any upside to stopping this. When thousands of people get into the street and start protesting the government, saying we're not going to take this anymore, then the government suddenly sees a reason to stop. But until that happens, the government is just saying, if the Jews don't care, why do we? If the Jews aren't protesting, if the Jews aren't standing up and screaming, if the Jews aren't crying, if the media is not covering this 24/7, then why do we care? Why would we go out of our way to do anything to stop this? Sure, Jew hatred's wrong, they'll say. No, they'll pay the lip service. But at the end of the day, what benefit does the government have to stopping this? None. In fact, the government stood by, the Trudeau government stood by and watched as this all started and this grew into something that's now unmanageable. They watched as schools were being shot and people were being beaten in the street and did nothing and said nothing and still got reelected, and a majority reelection by the Jewish community, where in Jewish neighborhoods they voted the majority liberals. Even though the liberals sat around and watched and allowed this to happen and did nothing to stop it, the majority of Jews in the country voted for liberal, at least in Canada. The Democrats have the same thing in the States. The majority of people voted for the Democrats in the States. Even though Jew hatred was rising and rising and rising, the majority of people in the States voted for the Democrats. In Canada, they voted for the Liberals. In Europe, they voted for the Labour parties. It's self-destructive. That's what it is. It's crazily self-destructive. So what is the basis of the Jew hatred? Why do they hate it? Why do people hate Jews? Well, the answer is not so difficult to understand. And I will look at this from a religious perspective, then I will look at this from a different perspective. I will give you two different perspectives on why Jews are hated. And by the way, the Jew hatred historically has caused more Jew hatred. Let me explain. So maybe 2 centuries ago, Jews were forbidden from taking part in any kind of business. They weren't allowed to be in business. The Muslims treated Jews like dhimmis. They were second-class citizens. They weren't allowed to conduct business with Muslims. The Christians treated the Jews really poorly and didn't allow them to get into many professions. So the professions Jews were allowed to get into were money trading, peddling, and essentially that's. In many cities, Jewish hospitals were set up. Because Jews weren't allowed to practice medicine in non-Jewish hospitals. They were barred from living in neighborhoods right across North America. And so when that happened, and in Europe too, the same thing happened in Europe, by the way. So it was was common around the world. So when that happened, Jews got involved in the only industries they were allowed to get involved with, in the clothing industry, in farming, and in money. They opened banks. They were able to lend money. They were able to deal in precious stones. Those were the kind of professions that Jews were allowed to go in, and they made a lot of money, much more money than a lot of other people made, doing other things that Jews weren't allowed to do. And so the jealousy factor was there, and jealousy breeds hate. Even though Jews were forced into those situations, jealousy breeds hate. And on a religious level, Jews were hated. The Christians hated the Jews, and the Muslims hated the Jews. And we saw that with the Crusades, and then we saw that with the Islamic Crusades. This happened. The jihads and the Crusades, Jews were murdered and forced to convert, and were killed for not converting. And the reason for that is quite simple. It sounds simple now, but many people suffered for this. The Catholics, the Muslims, believe that the Jews had a covenant with God. That's what Jews believe too. And the covenant with God was the Torah. The Torah was given to the Jewish people by God, and the Jewish people were given the commandments, and they were told that you must follow them. This is the lifestyle that you must live. You must follow the commandments of God. Later on, Christianity developed and Islam developed, and Christianity called it the New Testament. Their Bible is called the New Testament. And they said that the New Testament superseded the Old Testament. The Old Testament was still valid, but the New Testament superseded it. And it was a new covenant with God, which was called the New Testament. That's why the new is there. And the new covenant with God supersedes the old covenant with God. So it's a new covenant. We must follow the new covenant. The problem is that Jews didn't buy into the new covenant. Jews said, hey, we had our deal. We are sticking with our deal. And because we are sticking with our deal, you could do what you want. We're going to do what we want. But the Catholics had a hard time selling their New Testament. They had a hard time convincing other people that this was legitimate. Because how do you convince somebody that there's something new when there are still a whole lot of people who believe in the old? So the only way to get around that was to force the people who believed in the old to believe in the new. So there you had the Crusades, you had the Inquisitions, you had all the effort from the church to convert Jews to Christianity over centuries. And many Jews were persecuted and died because they refused to convert to Christianity. Fine. Along came Islam. And Islam said, this is the new deal with God. Christianity had the new deal with God. We have the new deal with God. So we accept the fact that the Jews had a deal with God. We accept the fact that the Christians had a deal with God. But now our deal with God is the current one. It's a new contract. And because we have a new contract with God, because this is the new deal, everybody, both Christians and Jews, have to accept the new deal. Oh, you don't want to accept the new deal? No problem. You don't accept the new deal with God? Well, then you are a usurper of God. You're an infidel, and you must be killed and must be destroyed. And that is the problem with Islam and Judaism and Christianity. It's the problem with Christianity and Judaism. This is why the religions don't get along. This is why I always laugh when someone says there's interfaith dialogue. This is what cracks me up. Because interfaith dialogue, there's no way to resolve this issue. If I believe that my deal with God is the current deal with God, and you say you have a different deal with God, and both of us can't have a deal, so one of us is the chosen people, so it's either me, you, or him. And if I'm the chosen people, then I'm the chosen people. And then if you say you're the chosen people, I have to kill you, right? Because you're stealing my status. And this is where the fight starts. So then we have, of course, the State of Israel. Pops up in 1948. The State of Israel pops up. The reestablishment of Jewish presence, of official Jewish presence in the historical Jewish land. Fine. Amazing. It's a miracle, really. Jews back in the Holy Land. Unbelievable miracle. Who would ever thought that would happen after a Holocaust? Who would ever thought that would happen after inquisitions, after pogroms, after all the murder and the blood that was shed, that Jews would have self-determination and be able to live in their own country, in a state that they call a Jewish state. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. But they were attacked. First week that they existed, they were attacked by the surrounding countries. Now, they weren't attacked, and this is the misnomer. This is really where the historians get it wrong. They weren't attacked because they were a new country. They weren't attacked because they were there in the land. In fact, if they were a Muslim country, if Israel had established themselves as a Muslim country, they would have never been attacked. They might not have been welcomed into the Muslim Brotherhood. They might not have been welcomed into the community of Muslims or into the Council of Muslims, but they wouldn't have been attacked. They were attacked because they were Jews. Period. Because the Quran is very clear when it says that any land that was ever a caliphate, and the Ottoman Empire was a caliphate, any land that was ever a caliphate is Muslim land forever, and anybody who's non-Muslim who sets up a country or a government on that land is an infidel, must be killed. This is why, and this is the only reason why, Israel has never been able to negotiate a peace agreement with any Muslim country, a real one. We just heard that one of the Muslim countries, I don't remember which country it was just in the news the other day, that one of the Muslim countries signed a peace deal with Israel, but they admitted that it was a farce. It was a farce just to lull Israel into a sense of security so they could attack them. And that's really what's been going on since the beginning of the State of Israel. Yasser Arafat was really clear on that when he signed the Oslo Accords. And then a week after he signed the Oslo Accords, he gave his famous 3 no's, and he stated very blatantly that I signed, and he said different things in Arabic than he said in English. But when he talked in Arabic, he said it very clearly. I signed the Oslo Accords to lull Israel into a sense of security. We will not rest, we will not sleep until the entire land is liberated. And not liberated because the state of Israel exists, liberated because the Jews exist on the land. And Jews can't be on the land. If you want to live as a Jew on that land, you have to live as a dhimmi, as a second-class citizen to the Arab people. That's the only way you're allowed to live on that land. And that is why no peace agreement that Israel has ever signed with Arabs has ever succeeded. That's why when the Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian Authority were offered 98% of Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem as a capital, they turned it down. Because the only condition Israel had was you have to recognize Israel as a Jewish state and accept Israel, whatever's left of Israel, as a Jewish state on the land. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it because their religion forbids them from doing it. That's why they couldn't do it. And that's why no peace agreement that Israel signs with any Arab country or any Arab entity is ever going to last. And it's going to be perpetual war there. Because if you believe that the land is holy land and that anybody who's not you is controlling that land is an infidel, has to be killed, then how could you possibly sign a deal? You're signing a deal against God. You can't do that. And that is why Israel's in the conundrum they're in, and that is why the Arabs will never sign a regular peace deal with them and live up to it. It's never going to happen. And I don't mean to be a pessimist. Trust me, if there was a way to make this work, I would love to make this work. I would not want to be a pessimist. But that's the truth. That is why there is Jew hatred. That is why Israel's going to be constantly at war. And that is why we have we're going to continuously have attacks on the Jewish people. But we shouldn't accept it. We should not be defined by our haters. We shouldn't be defined by the people who hate us. We shouldn't allow them to control our destiny. We shouldn't allow them to control our lives. We must fight back. We must teach our children to fight back. We have to stop hiding behind these soft words and stop hiding behind these false equivalencies. We have to stop hiding behind the fake propaganda. And we have to start telling the truth. And we have to start being blatantly honest about telling the truth. Which is why I love Israel News Talk Radio. Because the hosts on Israel News Talk Radio are blatantly honest about telling the truth. And that's really what we have to be doing now. We can't be standing around and pretending that this is all going to blow over and it's all going to go away. It's just going to get worse and worse. until Jews get up and stand up and defend themselves, until Jews start growing a backbone and fighting back, the situation's going to get worse. But there's another option. Another option. There's a strength in numbers. And as the situation deteriorates in North America, and as the attacks continuously grow right across North America and right across Europe, there's an option to move to Israel, for Jews to leave. It was funny, a couple of weeks ago, the Trump administration in the United States of America were talking about allowing Jews from Canada to apply for asylum in the United States. And I was thinking, what a great idea for Canadian Jews. You apply for asylum in the United States and they get attacked by Americans. That just doesn't make sense to me. It seems ridiculous, but it's a good sentiment. I mean, the American president had a good idea, but unfortunately, Jew hatred is also rampant across the United States. It's not really a safe haven for Jews anymore. New York City has the densest population of Jews outside of Israel. And a blatant attack on a synagogue happened on a Friday night in Middle Manhattan, the most populated island in New York. And the police won't even call it a hate crime. If it was an attack on a black church, it'd be a hate crime immediately. But an attack on a synagogue, not a hate crime. A man walked up to a pavilion in Edmonton, Canada. He had a knife in his hand. It was an Israeli pavilion at a cultural festival this week. He had a knife in his hand, and he walked into the pavilion with a knife in his hand and started stabbing the tent in the kitchen. Now, the people saw the knife and they ran away, so that's why he wasn't stabbing people. But if people are around, he would have been stabbing people. He was apprehended. In fact, some of the cooks and some of the people who were looking at the exhibit tackled him. He was apprehended. He was arrested. And they still have not charged him with hate crimes. It's too much paperwork, the police said, to charge of hate crimes. A man walked up to a synagogue in Saskatoon, Canada, and threw eggs at a synagogue. Once again, he was arrested, but not charged with hate crimes. He was charged with public mischief. Public mischief. Yeah, maximum $5,000 fine. So he could be released, pay his $5,000, get released, and go and attack Jews again. How Jews were attacked in Montreal, Canada. The synagogues were burned and schools were shot at, and the people arrested were charged with minor crimes, not with terrorism. In Europe, Jews were attacked as they were walking around in Belgium. The police arrested them, the attackers, not the Jews. Police arrested the attackers and then released them, pressing no charges, with a warning. Until the police around the world take it seriously and take the fact that Jews being attacked is a serious crime, we will continue being attacked. What's the solution? Well, I've been saying this for years too. The solution is quite simple. Jewish schools have to start teaching children self-defense. Jewish organizations that are there to protect the Jewish community and collect millions of dollars protecting the Jewish community have to start giving free self-defense courses. And Jews have to learn how to fight back. Because the only thing that's going to stop a bully, the only thing that's going to stop a hater, the only thing that's going to stop anybody from attacking anybody is if the person you're attacking hits you back harder. That's the only solution. Or move to Israel and allow the army to fight back for you. I'm Howie Silberger. This is Political Hitman here on Israel News Talk Radio. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next show. Take care. Be safe.